Joining us now, and we hate to put him to work down there in Palm Springs, but I think his parting message to us yesterday was just don't let there be a Horvat trade while I'm on the golf course. And Jeff Paterson, we figure you were about the 10th or 11th hole yesterday when the trade for Horvat went down with the Islanders. Thanks for stopping by today and doing some bonus work while on vacation, my friend.
Yeah, of course. This was part of the deal when I made the plans to come to the desert. And hey, look, in the world we live in now, this is it's easy. Just bring the computer along, a microphone, and here we are. Yeah, somewhere on the back nine. I'm not sure exactly when the trade went down, but I know I checked my phone at the turn, nothing doing, so I put the phone away and just went back to playing some golf. And sure enough, when I stepped off the golf course, Beau's world had turned. I guess to a lesser degree, mine had. But yeah, things had happened in that time. So, spent the better part of the evening trying to process it and just reading and listening to as much as I could. Because I honestly, I didn't anticipate that it was going to happen as quickly as it did. I kind of thought that maybe I was all right to get a little getaway into the sun, but no, they decided to make the deal now. So, I guess if you're the Canucks, like, why not? You saw that they shut down Mikheyev on Friday night. Now they move out their big trade chip here. Like, it's on. Like, I don't think they're going to catch Columbus and some of those other teams below them, but this is like full speed to the bottom now for the Vancouver Canucks.
We'll ask you our Bodog poll question from yesterday and then move on to what we're asking and what we're talking about today. In your view, Jeff, did they get enough for Horvat?
You know what? I think I had braced myself to be underwhelmed by the return on Bo Horvat. It was funny. I was on with Nick Kyprios and Justin Bourne in Toronto a couple of weeks back, and we were talking about Horvat then. And Kipper said it felt to him like the Canucks were trying to re-sign Bo as a $5 million player, but try to shop him on the market as an $8 million player. And I kind of got that sense that made, that summed it up nicely. And ultimately, they couldn't reach a term with him, an extension, so that they did have to trade him. But I think people realize, teams around the league recognize he's a good player and he's having a hell of a season. We know that. But, is this repeatable? Is this the new Bo Horvat that's going to be somewhere between a 40 and a 50-goal scorer moving forward? Probably not. But the Islanders need help offensively. It's wild. Since Christmas, they've scored 36 goals in 17 games.
Oh, my God.
Their power play is running at 7% since Christmas. So Bo certainly can step in and help in those regards. And they're right there knocking on the door. They think that they can be a playoff team, and they hope that Bo Horvat's going to help them. The Canucks are not going to be a playoff team. They've come to that realization. And so, in return, it feels to me like the first rounder was the centerpiece, and then they built out the deal from there. Sounds like the Isles have been trying to move Beauvillier for a while, and so I'm not surprised that they would have required that he was included in a deal like this one, and then Räty immediately becomes one of, if not the Canucks' top prospects, which speaks an awful lot to the depth of their prospect pool. But, you hope that there's something there. Of course, just the way things work. His last NHL goal here in Vancouver back on the 3rd of January. So he hasn't scored a lot. He scored twice this season, and one of them came against the Vancouver Canucks. And now, at some point, he'll get a chance to be a Vancouver Canuck, but it sounds like he's going to be an Abbey Canuck first and foremost. So, not blown away, but understanding that it was going to be tough to, I think, be blown away by the return, even given the season that Bo is having. I think the Canucks did all right in this trade. Yeah. And again, it's really going to come down to where does that first round pick land? Is it going to be this year, or could the bottom fall out on an aging Islanders team that maybe just can't get it back together, and maybe Bo finds that it's tough slogging in Brooklyn, and next year maybe it's a top 10, maybe it's even better than that. So we're going to need to see ultimately when the dust settles. But for me, getting that first rounder was required, and it also signals that finally, yes, there is a management group here that is making deals with an eye to the future.
Which brings us to today's Bodog poll question, Jeff, because, yesterday we were doing the emergency show, and I'm sitting there going, well, the 23 draft is so strong, the Canucks are going to want that pick sooner rather than later, to which a lot of listeners said, hey, hold on, Sekeres, 2024 is unprotected. That pick could float to top 5. Who knows how high that pick could be.
But they've got that cap space. They're going to be a decent team.
Exactly. You have to think the Islanders are going to be able to stay out of the dregs of the league next year. But
yeah.
You tell me, sir, which one should the Canucks want? The 2023 top 12 protected first rounder or the unprotected 24 first rounder?
At first blush, I would say this year, if the Islanders just miss out on the playoffs and that pick is somewhere in the top 15, if you could have two picks in the top 15, I think you jump at that in a draft like this one. But again, like things happen, and you're right. Like the Islanders certainly aren't making this trade thinking that the bottom is going to fall out, but and knock on wood for all the people in Coquitlam, but like, what if something happened to Matt Barzell next year, injury wise? And those things do happen. Like those seasons.
Or Sorokin. Yeah.
Exactly. Those seasons can go sideways. So, it's hard to pick one or the other, but I just think for the Canucks trying to get the rebuild going here, 2 first-rounders, 2 relatively high first-rounders, top half of this year's draft class, get them into the system and maybe address some needs. And, the other thing too is like, now that they've got this first rounder, like, yeah, we all assume that they're going to use it, but when you talk about major surgery, like this had to happen. So the first shoe now, and it was a big shoe, the biggest one that they had, Shaquille O'Neal size shoe, it has dropped. And now you've got this first round pick that is capital. Like, maybe you use that to address the defense needs, not through the draft, but, maybe you spin and turn that one around. I don't like the idea of trading a first rounder after just getting one. But, we spent so much time last year, guys, almost daily it felt down the stretch towards the trade deadline, talking about they have to get it right with the JT Miller trade, and it has to address their need on defense. Well, that trade never came to be. And, of course, now it's Horvat out the door. And they still haven't addressed the defense. And so there's a part of me that feels like Canucks fans are doomed to just seeing this defense till the end of time. But I do hope that this is part of the bigger plan here. But, that's a hypothetical Miller trade, a real Bo Horvat trade, and nothing on the back end. Now, maybe the draft pick does get used to finally address the defense weaknesses, whatever the case. I guess I would just say, if they can get 2 picks in the top half of this draft, then at least we'll have a sense of what they've done with them, who those players are, and then you can start to sort of project, what the Canucks are looking at in terms of pieces that they'll have to move forward with and hopefully start to build this thing back up.
Well, to further back that up, looking at Craigslist, and Craig is not that good a Swami, but he's pretty darn good in terms of predicting the approximate whereabouts. Craig has one defenseman in the top 14 of his Craigslist. And then they start to come a little bit more fast and furious. But my point is that even if the Canucks don't get the 13th, which is the highest they can get this year, 14, 15, 16, they might end up, guys, with the second ranked defenseman in the drafts, according to Craig Button. And if you think about it in this way too, Jeff, they lost 2 defensemen or 2 centers this year. They lost JT Miller, who really shouldn't be a center, and they lost Bo Horvat, and the center depth, of course, in the organization. So they address a huge organizational need by getting a center, and and that's assuming, and we heard Alvin say he wants Räty to continue to be a center. So, I mean, really, I don't know that you can ignore the center position either.
No, I mean, it brings JT Miller back into the middle, unfortunately, because I just don't think that that's where he's best suited. But there's no doubt for the remainder of this year. But I also think, big picture, they figure that JT has to be a center and that Elias Paterson and JT Miller can offer them a 1-2 punch down the middle. We know that Miller's had the defensive issues when he plays center, that he's better suited to the wing, that he's been more productive there. But again, their hands are a little bit tied here. But you're right. I mean, I think long term, yes, like beyond those 2 guys, there isn't anything really in the system, or not an awful lot that projects as a productive NHLer. So that's why I say Räty goes right to the top of the list. In fact, I think some people have put him at the top of the Canucks list of prospects now. I was intrigued by that as well, because when he came through here with the Islanders, he played 6 minutes that night. Now he scored. He was on a line with Matt Martin and Ross Johnston. So, sort of the square peg in the round hole on that kind of line. And yet it also tells you about the Canucks because that line ended up scoring on them. So he was a center then. And I think that, for the long term, like that's probably wise. Get him to Abbotsford, put him in the middle, help him develop, continue to develop, and when the time is right, and maybe it's later this year or sometime next year, you hope he can come up and slot in as a centerman, because I think that, they're still trying to figure out what they've got in a guy like Jack Studnicka. They picked him up. He's moved around a little bit. I'm still not sure that anybody's got the true book on him and where he's best suited to play, but it was short-lived in the middle, and he seems to have been a winger here. But I think when they made the trade that there was some hope that, maybe he could be a center as well. So a lot of these final 33 games for the Vancouver Canucks are going to be experimental, and maybe we'll find out a little bit more of, some of the guys that they've got at the NHL level, where they are best slotted for the future of this hockey club.
Alvin addressed it yesterday. He didn't commit to anything because he said he had to talk to Tocchet and to Rutherford as well, but it certainly sounds like this team is finally ready to empower Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, whether that's moving the C on over to one of them or whether that's giving them A's and they go with a 3 alternate group. What is your best guess at what they will do? What would you do, Jeff Paterson, with that C, of course, that Bo Horvat has worn so proudly for nearly half decade here?
Yeah, I'd be in no rush to put a C on anybody. 33 games to go. Season has slipped away. I think, you can learn a fair bit about players through hard times here and challenges. I mean, they say the challenge reveals character. And so I don't think I'd be in any race to anoint anybody the captain, but we heard it from Bruce Boudreau in the preseason when they had Paterson and Hughes both wearing A's. Of course, Bruce isn't here, but organizationally, the same decision makers. Now, I think Rick Tocchet would have some say, but he's 3 games into the job. And so, I just come back to, for his sake and for the team's sake, there's no rush here. Let Rick Tocchet truly get a feel for who's who and what's what around this hockey club. But there's no doubt that Pettersson and Hughes are going to be part of the leadership group. And I think for Elias Pettersson, the organization, again, it's all about building this plan to sell him on the future and their vision. And, now this trade's gone down, so they have a sense of some of the pieces that are involved. But yeah, I mean, if you want Elias Pettersson long-term, then I think you have to lock him into the leadership group. And my sense is he will be the next captain of the Vancouver Canucks, but maybe you wait until next season, the start of next season, to make it all formal, have a big presentation like they did for Bo Horvat in front of ahead of the home opener a few years ago. So I'd go with rotating A's the rest of the way, and maybe that means that Miller and OEL remain with letters on their jerseys, and then you could switch off between Pettersson and Hughes on some nights, or if there was somebody else that you wanted to experiment with as well. But I just think with 33 games to go in a season that has slipped away in terms of any significance, and you needing somebody to rise up in the locker room and be that motivator and everything else, save that for next year when hopefully the games will matter a little bit more.
What do you think the chances are of another big trade involving a piece of what they just acquired? Like, is there? They said all the right things, like that they want to use all 3 pieces that they got, because right now that's what you should say. But do you think there's any possibility that they're playing 3D chess here and might flip the pick, the prospect or the player? I think the player would be the least scandalous for most people. I don't think people are going to get super attached to Anthony Beauvillier here, but is there a potential for something else coming down the pipe?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, in order for them to start making some things happen, as we said, major surgery, Horvat certainly qualifies. Like, that's a big piece. I had all along, I think I mentioned it on Rinkwide the other night, I've kind of set the trade line in my head at 2.5, and that was Horvat, it's Schenn, and then to make it a successful trade deadline, can they move a third piece? Now, this was before the Horvat deal had gone down, so in my head, I'm thinking, can they move off Besser? Can they find a taker for a Connor Garland? Is there another trade to be made? If they could make 3 ahead of the trade deadline, then I think that's pretty significant. You are shaking up a large part of your roster. Now they've got additional pieces to play with, and so yeah, I guess I could. And when they didn't address the defense core, again, these final 33 games don't really matter. If a lot of people think, hey, run the same 6 guys out, in front of Spencer Martin an awful lot down the stretch, and that's probably going to yield the kind of results that the Tankists are looking for. So could I absolutely see them turning this first round pick into some sort of defenseman as part of a larger trade or on its own? Yeah, I think that's possible. And that's why I said, it just, whatever they're going to do, it had to start with that first step. Every journey starts with a first step. Mm-hmm. And so they've done that now. And let's see where it rolls here. Although I thought it was interesting on Friday night, somebody asked Alvin about moving guys like Myers and Garland and Besser. And he said, like, are you looking around the league? Have you seen any trades? And of course, this was before he was involved in the biggest trade that we've seen this season. But his point was he felt that moving off some of those larger money contracts was something that was going to have to wait until the off season. So, unless this kind of, is a jolt to the front office and they've got their mojo back and now Jim Rutherford's getting into trade mode again, I do think that some of those deals, more money comes off the books, more time elapses, all that kind of stuff. The bonus for Myers, maybe you are looking to the summer. But yeah, I mean, as Alvinum said on Friday too, we're 27th in the league. He repeated that a couple of times, basically letting everybody know that they're not happy with where they are and that a whole lot has to change. This is the first big change, obviously. Let's see where it goes from here.
Yeah, and in Beauvillier, I mean, an at-cost winger who doesn't really play a ton of special teams. He is quite a dispensable piece if, of course, they want to be competitive next year.
But if the Isles couldn't dispense of him, what are the chances the Canucks can? But, I mean, I like the fact that he's got 50 NHL playoff games. I mean, I would think that would be interesting to somebody. But
and played well in those 50. And Alvin noted that twice in his presser. And frankly, as he was noting it, started to get a little bit of bad vibes there. Like, Jim Benning saw him at a couple of World Juniors and thought him great, and therefore, we moved heaven and earth to make him a Vancouver Canuck. I sort of got those vibes, but maybe I'm just scarred. Jeff Paterson.
Yeah, I think you can make the case that Beauvillier's best hockey has been in the playoffs. That, this is a guy that has, in 6 full NHL seasons, never been a 40-point guy. 39 is his tops. He had 21 goals back in his second season. And his best scoring rates came in the shortened COVID season. He had 15 goals and 28 points in 47 games. So he was tracking for career best, but alas, there weren't enough games that year. Not a single power play point this season. All of his scoring coming at even strength. And, like his team, he has been ice cold since Christmas as well. He has 1 goal and 4 points in 17 games. So there hasn't been a whole lot there for Anthony Beauvillier since Christmas. And, another winger, just add him to the stable of, wingers on this Canuck roster now, making a significant buck at 4.1 this year and next. So, yeah, I tend to agree. Like, if the Islanders couldn't move him, it's hard to imagine the Canucks turning around and flipping him at this point, unless it was part of an expanded deal. And I can't rule that out entirely, but my sense is that Beauvillier will play here. I guess if he plays here this year and then comes back next, at that point, what do you do with them? Is it a guy that's just playing out the string? Do you try and flip him at next year's deadline as perhaps a rental if they can build him back up and he can have some sort of success here? And also, what does a trade, he's only known the Islanders and the Islanders system. Like, how liberating might this be? Yeah, the Canucks can't defend, but they score in bunches for a guy that has played this lockdown system his entire life. So I do wonder, what does he look like? A change might be good for a guy like Beauvillier. And the flip side there is, just back to Horvat for a sec, guys. I've covered him obviously his entire time, as you guys have. Having such an incredible season, on pace for 52 goals, and I just wonder now, what does this do for that? I see David Faceoff has him slotted in already on the top line between Barzell and Josh Bailey, but you have to wonder. The Isles just don't score much, and as I said, their power play is dreadful here. Bo can help, but right now it feels like it's going to be a challenge for him just to get to 40 goals with 30 games remaining on the island. Forget about taking a legitimate run at 50. I was hoping for his sake that if he was moving, he was going to go to a team that had a legitimate Stanley Cup chance this year. I don't think the Islanders do, but they do have a chance to get to the playoffs, and that's certainly more than can be said about the team that he is leaving behind here. So I think for me, the great regret in Bo Horvat's time is, got to the playoffs as a rookie, played those 6 games against the Calgary Flames. That series didn't go well, but I think at that point, you probably think the playoffs are going to happen every year throughout your career. And Bo would be the first to tell you that that's not the case, and of course, has not skated in another postseason game in Vancouver since 2015.
Yeah, on Beauvillier, when I said dispensable piece, I think he gets a lot easier to trade in the summer. I think he gets even easier to trade next year. As you move into the season. Quite right, Jeff. Horvat, I think a lot of fans here would have liked to have seen him go to a team that's a little higher up the pecking order, a chance to make a run because of how great he was in those bubble playoffs.
Remember how excited he was?
Oh, my God. You
Guys,
remember how
the
excited
joy?
we were watching him? Like, just bull in a china shop, get on my back. We're going to the next round. I'm
They
your
had
captain.
these hallway shots, though, of him coming off the
Yes,
ice. He
yes.
was just so damn excited.
Yes. And lastly, Jeff, I know this didn't escape you as a chronicler of Canucks lore, but nearly 25 years to the week where Trevor Linden, the captain, gets traded to the New York Islanders for a similar package. And Jeff, Bo Horvat and Corey Schneider, teammates on the island.
Yeah, that's right.
Once upon a time, right, at an NHL draft, it was the blockbuster that you were going to want to hear.
Well, and Lou was the guy that traded the pick away. That
That's
became Bo
right.
Horvat, and he finally gets Bo Horvat back all these years later, and it'll be weird and strange. His first game is going to be in Philadelphia on Monday out of the break, and then they're home to Seattle on the Tuesday, and of course the Canucks are there next Thursday, which is wild timing. And the other thing is, unless Casey Sekeres is in a really generous mood, Bo Horvat's going to have to find another number for the first time in his National Hockey League career, because Sekeres has been 53 on the island for a long, long time.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. We'll let you get back to vacation. Thanks for this. We'll be listening to Rinkwide. I knew you and Andrew are getting at her here and busy, and we'll catch up on Sekeres and Price next week.
Now, I make the pledge to you guys again that I'm available tomorrow.
Oh, hey.
But
you stop right there.
But
some of us are going
like
to
to get
Hawaii
18
later
holes
this
in.
week. Yeah.
yes, let's hope for a quieter day tomorrow.
Yes, please.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Jeff.